Hello and welcome to this latest video blog for Divorsee. It is my absolute privilege to be joined by Stephen Marks, who is one of the partners at SRLV and is one of the most sought after accountants in the music and entertainment sector. He represents many well-known musicians, bands, actors, performers, and theatrical and TV producers. And as if Stephen's work isn't high pressured enough, he also advises in relation to matrimonial disputes and can act as an expert within court proceedings. In fact, he was one of the experts instructed in the recent famous case of CB v KB, where his concentration was focused on valuing an anonymous but well-known musician's business interests and more fundamentally his income streams. Now, not to blow Stephen's trumpet too much, but along with the other experts involved in the case, he walked away from that hearing with a hugely impressive commendation from Mr. Justice Mostyn, one of the most senior family law judges in the country, who claimed him to be an excellent witness whose evidence was clear, concise, and importantly relevant, and who did not dissemble or prevaricate. It's absolutely great to have you as part of the Divorsee network, Stephen. Welcome.
Thank you, Neil. I'm delighted to be here.
Good. So obviously your expertise lies fundamentally in the music and entertainment sector, as I said within that, that opening sort of gambit there for you. You assist artists, bands, and you also work with management and various labels and everything in between, as I understand it, and that you have a particular expertise in monetizing income streams for artists or bands or whoever. I suppose probably to start with, what we should do is always start at the beginning and perhaps paint a hypothetical scenario whereby an artist comes to see me. They're a famous artist in the music industry, internationally known. We'll go with a female artist because actually the last client I had was a female artist. And they come to me and they say, look, Neil, marriage is on the rocks. I'm contemplating divorce proceedings, and what I need to understand are what are my options, you know, what's going to happen. Now, I would talk about those options, but as part of it, I would be explaining to that individual that there is a need to deal with their her financial claims with her spouse. And the way in which we're going to do that to begin with is go through this full and frank disclosure exercise, where we're going to get all of the finances laid out on that proverbial kitchen table, hopefully by agreement, so that we can then use that as the basis for fruitful discussions, negotiations, and then hopefully achieve a settlement. It's incumbent on both parties to actually do that full and frank disclosure. As part of that, obtaining full and frank disclosure and giving the information, I'm going to need to understand what her business interests are worth through the work that she does as an artist. Now, they're obviously going to be, well, what typically happens is, and you'll be able to confirm this, Stephen, is there are potentially various different commercial interests through company holdings, and also there is the various avenues through which income can be generated as well. So I suppose what I would do is I'd pick up the phone and say, Stephen, I have this client, these are the circumstances. What I need to do is have an understanding in terms of valuation of assets and income, and then I would basically hand it over to you and say, Stephen, what do you need and what would you do?
Thank you, Neil. Well, generally speaking, a musician or recording artist or singer-songwriter tend to hold their rights in various entities, whether they hold them in a sole tradership or a limited company, which is fairly normal. What we would look to do in a circumstance such as yourselves is to understand the valuation of the rights that have been generated, whether they're performing rights, whether they're songwriting rights, whether they're recording rights, in order to evaluate the overall, let's say, net worth of those assets that have been generated during the lifetime of the marriage. In order for us to be able to be in a position to value those rights, we would need financial information, as you rightly say. So we would ask for the sets of accounts, we would ask for a variety of agreements, we would ask for the royalty accounting, which has been given to the artist, and we would literally put this into a a spreadsheet in order to equate how much those assets have generated in the form of income over a number of years, and also how much they could be valued at if they were ultimately sold. So for us, the job at hand is no different from valuing a house or an asset of other stocks or shares, any other asset that the client might hold, is to come to you with saying that the musical activity of that artist is worth X, and it's how we define X or how we ascertain X, which is going to be the job that we are going to be levied with.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you kind of alluded to it there, actually, talking about the fact that it's not necessarily too different to valuation exercises that are relevant to other sectors. And actually, working in the environment that I work in and helping various people from various backgrounds, I do see those similarities. The difference fundamentally comes down to the significant expertise you have, the years that you have under your belt and the knowledge of the industry to be able to confidently say, well, look, judging by your financial data that you've provided us with and the historical analysis that we've gone through, this is where we would believe a fair figure to be in relation to evaluation for those.
Absolutely. I mean, you would have to have the knowledge and understanding of how the music and entertainment industry operates to be able to give that figure with the clarity and definition that the courts are going to require. So our experience, which we've gleaned over many, many years, having been in that sector personally since 1988, so a fair number of years now, there is the way in which the industry works is slightly different to the norm in the fact that the way earnings are generated can be either on a 6 monthly basis if it's a royalty accounting period, or can be on a live tour. So the way in which income can therefore be monetized isn't quite the same as, I don't want to be facetious, but a property or where there's monthly rental income or anything. So you would have to have the knowledge and understanding of how the particular industry works in order to quantify this value and be able to give the court the security that the value that you're giving to this is one which you have thought out, you've worked out, you've looked at the recording artist. They may have a good year, they may have a bad year, they may have a lean year, they may not work, they may produce 4 albums over a period of 10 years, or they may just produce 1 or 2 albums. But the way that music and the exploitation of music has grown so much over the last 10 to 15 years, there are so many different avenues now whereby there's inherent value in what an artist creates, and it's our experience and our knowledge and being able to give you that confidence that we are going to be giving you a report which fully encompasses those values.
Yeah, and without going too technical, because we could talk for hours about this, and you could probably educate me for hours about this moreover. There are, of course, different sorts of valuation methods adopted, aren't there? It's not like you look at a spreadsheet and you say, let's take, for example, a company, and you're trying to value its net worth, really. It's not like you've got a list of assets, a list of liabilities. You take one off, with sort of the liabilities off the assets, and you get to that net asset figure, and you say, bang, that's the valuation. It's far more complicated and detailed than that, isn't it?
Far more complex. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it's rocket science, because at the end of the day, it is a business. But like with other businesses, there are methods and ways in which you can value income streams and asset bases. And there could be all sorts of reasons as to why they're either greater value or less value, depending on how long the rights are, how they've been exploited, where they've been exploited, the income streams that they relate to. So yes, it's not a asset stroke liability valuation, and here's what it's going to be worth, and it'll be worth this today, and it'll always be worth this. The industry changes as its exploitation changes, as exploitation by media in various digital networks applies. It is evolving. And all I could say is that it's a very interesting sphere to be in, and you would need to understand the various different ways in which the industry works to be able to give you that information.
I suppose actually the explosion of avenues that now exist in relation to exploitation of those rights makes it all the more detailed and complicated trying to get down to that net figure as well. And also from my point of view, it is a purely hypothetical exercise. And if I have a client who's going through that kind of scenario, that situation, what I'd be keen to avoid is that hypothetical projection sits within what is pretty reasonable actually and pretty likely. It's never going to be bang on. There's no exact science to it. But what, where the expertise really comes in is trying to settle on that figure that is almost kind of highly probable in a way, so that the individual who I am working with and we are working with can comfortably or more comfortably negotiate a settlement, knowing that that is there or thereabouts where the figure is likely to be, so that it gives them every chance of reaching a speedier settlement, a more amicable, constructive settlement, rather than having to go through expensive litigation and have various experts saying X, Y, and Z and conflicting against each other.
But there's always going to be the people who want to have a higher value and people who want to have a lower value for various different reasons as to where the divorce is going to work out. But I think it's having the approach to understand that there may be times where the income is substantial. There may be times when the income is not substantial. There may be times when, with all musicians, they have a very, well, one would hope, a very popular period in their lives, and they can generate quite vast sums of money. Whether that continues on indefinitely would depend on so many different variables nowadays, and you can find that there are artists whose catalogues are being exploited now who generated works 30-40 years ago, but those works are still highly valued. Yet you could find other artists who are very in vogue at the moment, and they may not be around in many years to come. So the industry does move with the times, and it does mean that we have to be quite careful in our valuations and give you something that we feel comfortable with.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.